Hello, and welcome to Tracy Mommy Reads. Before I even get started, I just want to apologize. Of course, I will get all set up and ready to do this book review, and it sounds like somebody in the neighborhood is having work done. I don't know if they're putting on a roof or what, but you may hear some faint clacking or banging in the background. Hopefully, it's not too big of a distraction. Anyway, today I am going to be reviewing When We Believed in Mermaids by Barbara O'Neill. When We Believed in Mermaids. And as you can see, this is another Kindle read. But this one, I just happen to be going onto my Kindle to play a game or do something. And sometimes they'll have like promotional books or whatever that have been recommended. And so I clicked on it actually by accident. And then I just thought, wait, I started reading the blurb, looked interesting. It was free. I said, well, I'm gonna try this. But what I always do is I always go to the reviews. And I think I mentioned this in another video. A lot of times I like to look at the worst reviews. You know, what are they saying? You know, why did they give the book 1 star? And so this one lady, she was going in and on about the writing being kind of amateurish, or that there were so many overused metaphors, or that there was a lot of redundancy. And I was like, oh, so it's gonna be one of them kind of books. So I just happened to open it just to kind of, you know, maybe read the first page or whatever, so that I could be like, okay, you know what, I'm not gonna read this after all. I can move on to the next book on my list. I ended up finishing this book in like a day because it was so good. I don't know if that woman was reviewing the wrong book or what, but this book was very well written. I mean, it was beautifully written. And, you know, I'll tell you more about it as the review goes on. But basically, what the book is about, and let me get my notes, you know, always I got to get my notes. You know, I'm getting a little older, so I can't be remembering a lot of this stuff right off the top of my head. I have to have some assistance from the handy dandy MacBook here. Okay, so, and I believe this is in the blurb, so I don't think it's a spoiler. This woman is watching TV one night, right? She's watching the news, and there's a fire. I'm trying to think. Did I have her? Okay, Kit is her name. So Kit is watching the news, and you know she's in California, and they're showing this international incident that happened, a fire in New Zealand, you know, just on the national news or whatever. And she just kind of stops, and the reporter is talking, and behind the reporter, like over her shoulder, they like totally pan in on this woman's face, totally clear as day, and it's her sister. You say, why is that a big deal? Well, because her sister died 15 years before. So she is watching the news, and there's her dead sister. And so at first, as I was reading, I mean, it was well written is the reason why I kept going, you know, through the first chapter or two, because initially I was like, wouldn't her sister look different? I mean, 15 years ago, like, how does she know that's her? And as you start to read the book, there was something that happened, and her sister ended up with this really big scar on her face. And, you know, I guess, you know, your sister, hey, you know your sister. And then the woman also had that same scar. So Kit, you know, she goes surfing, because that's a big theme in the book. You know, she surfs. The whole family surfs because they lived on the beach, you know. And her mom calls her when she gets home, and she's like, I saw your sister on the news, like just so nonchalant. And she was going to try to act like she didn't see it at first, but then she admitted that she had seen it. And then so Kit, who is a doctor, she's an emergency room doctor, she embarks on this journey. And this is the part at first they almost lost me, because Kit didn't do any research. She didn't call nobody. She just like got on a plane and went to New Zealand to look for her sister, who it may or may not have been, because her sister, like I said, she had died 15 years prior, allegedly on a train that had been blown up by terrorists. So that was the only part I was like, okay, you know how there's in every story there's that moment of disbelief. I was like, why wouldn't she have done some research or made some phone calls or gotten the authorities or somebody involved? But no, Kit went to New Zealand all by herself because her mother had to stay back and watch her cat. But so she goes to New Zealand, and it was just, from that point on, I was hooked. The thing that really made the story for me, there were a lot of flashbacks, and they were so seamless to when they were children, you know, through now. And you learn as the story goes on why, you know, the events that led up to her sister faking her death. And it was like so prolific. And one of the, what she said to her sister was something along the lines of, I had to kill that person so that I can become a new person. So when, you know, the opportunity presented itself, people thought she was dead. She was like, oh, I'm going to run with this. I'm out of here. So let me go back to like when they were growing up. So when they were growing up, their parents, their father was a chef, and they had their own restaurant like in this beach town right off the cliffs where, you know, the beach, the ocean, everything was right there. And they lived in a house that was kind of connected to the restaurant. And her parents, you know, their parents were irresponsible, to say the least. I mean, they were so caught up in each other, in their business, and partying and drinking and drugs and all kind of stuff, that these little girls, because when they're like kind of recounting their when they were younger, I mean, we're talking like, I think they started off at maybe, I don't know, 6 and 4, you know, and it goes all the way up until the point where her sister Josie, who has now reinvented herself as Mary, but it's Mari. She was the oldest, right? And so Kit was the youngest. And it went through to the point where Josie basically had left town and, you know, ended up dying on the train. But she had gotten into, Josie, the oldest, so she had gotten into drugs, and her life was just, it was, you know, the irony, it was a train wreck. Her life was a train wreck. But so there was this boy who kind of just showed up at their house. His name was Dylan, when they were younger. And, you know, he was a runaway, and he had been abused and had all kind of issues, but her parents took him in, and he became like a surrogate brother, you know, to them, and took care of them, like, because he was a few years older than them. So he, you know, made sure they went to school, and he combed their hair and did all this stuff. So, you know, anywho, so in New Zealand, Kit meets this man, and they have this whirlwind romance that was kind of cute or whatever, but it was just so, now that was the only thing I will say, it was just so random how she was looking for her sister. She just, you know, went over to the area where the, when she got to New Zealand, she went over to the area where the fire had been, and was asking people, had they ever seen this woman, you know, showing them a picture of her, and, you know, and then she went to this surf place because her sister liked to surf too, so she went surfing in New Zealand, asking those people. And the way that her and her sister actually, and it was so funny too, because there were all these like misconnections, hit and misses. Like Kit and this guy were walking up this promenade or something, and Josie and her friend were sitting in a restaurant, and she looks out and she's like, oh, that woman looks like my sister. You know, she's thinking to herself, because nobody know, not even her husband, because Mary is now married. She has 2 kids. They think she's from Canada. They don't even know her background or anything. She never told anybody. So anyway, yeah, like she sees her sister, or it may have been a thing where they were on a ferry and one got off when one was getting on, and they didn't see each other. That was driving me crazy. But the way that they finally like actually, you know, came face to face, which they did. I don't know, that's a spoiler. I mean, obviously they came together, because, you know, in the blurb, I think she mentions that they come face to face. But it was just so random how they actually came face to face. And I don't know, this book, this was one of my favorite books that I've read so far for 2021. I think I've read 5 books so far, and this is the best one. And I think because, like I said, initially I was like, that's far-fetched. That would never happen. No, why didn't she do some, you know, and I kept thinking I was going to put it down or whatever, but the writing was so, you know, it was so poetic almost, that I just kept getting drawn into the characters and what the story that the author was trying to tell. It was the whole theme was about, you know, secrets and like reinventing yourself and forgiveness and you know, the idea, and I'm trying not, the reason why I'm like stammering here is because I want to say stuff, but I want y'all to go read it, so I can't give y'all no spoilers. But it was just really sad when you look back on their life when they were children, and just how they had been abandoned basically by their parents. There were there was this part in there where Josie, aka Mary, she was just talking about, because she has a daughter, and when she looked at her daughter and she just realized how her mother had failed her, because when you just leave a girl alone in the world, she's at the mercy of the world, and they're going to just eat her alive if she doesn't have somebody there guiding her and protecting her. And so she just, you know, felt like she could never forgive her mother for that, because after having her own daughter, she realizes just how much her mother just failed to actually be a mother. And it's just surprising to me, not surprising because I know it's a book, fiction book, but this part is so true to life. When you talk about nature versus nurture, both her and her sister, for the most part, I mean, they were raised in the exact same environment. Yet the younger sister, Kit, you know, she goes on to, in a way, thrive outwardly. She becomes a doctor. She was never on drugs. She didn't have any type of promiscuous type relationships or anything, whereas all of that fell on her older sister Josie. But whereas Josie, through reinventing herself as Mary and kind of killing off her former self, she had kind of exorcised a lot of her demons. You know, she had gotten clean. She just totally became a different person. And her sister, ironically, when you look at all she had accomplished, becoming a doctor, and she had never experienced or went through a lot of the things that her older sister Josie had, she was the one that had the most stuff still inside of her that was affecting her and affecting her relationships, and, you know, not really, she wasn't really fully living. So the trip to New Zealand, in the end, it ended up being a really good thing for her. I was just, Dylan's fate and the whole thing that happened with him, I was just gutted. I was really expecting something. I was kind of expecting kind of what happened, but I thought it was going to happen in a different way. I thought he was going to end up being a bad guy, and he really wasn't. He was just damaged. And then you bring that into a family situation that was dysfunctional as all get out. It was a Molotov cocktail in the end. But I'm not usually like a sappy person, you know, with regards to reading. I mean, there have been some movies like Beaches and Steel Magnolias, you know, movies like that where I'm kind of like, oh my God, you know, teary-eyed. But there was a part towards the end of the book, well, I guess it was the end of the book pretty much, that actually got me teared up, like reading it. And that does not happen often, if at all with me. No matter how good the book is, I don't get that emotional. But it was just something about that scene that happened at the end that, I don't know, it got me all choked up. But yeah, it was heartbreaking in a lot of places, with like this palpable imagery. Like you could see the beach town where they live. You could almost smell the ocean air and see the views and the vistas in New Zealand, the way that she wrote about them. And it's a melancholy book, but at the same time, there's a happy ending, because to me, what the author basically communicated through the story is that at any point, you know, you could change your life, or there are better days ahead, or trouble don't last always, you know, whatever those kind of cliches that you've heard, but they're true. You know, a lot of times I think we go through things and we either think we're the only ones or this is never going to end. And sometimes people meet a tragic end because they just don't think that they can survive. And this story was definitely about survivors. Well, for a few of the characters, they were survivors. But, and you know, for Josie to get a second chance, you know, after all she had been through, that was really heartwarming. But Lynn's part, that was sad what happened, but overall just a beautiful story. And I love reading stories like this, but I'm wondering, you know, like with with a lot of the books that I read, would I watch a movie about it? You know, because I love action and thrillers and suspense movies. I don't really gravitate towards those kinds of books. And with books, you know, I'm like about happily ever after. I want sappy, I want drama, I want romance, I want all those things, and this book delivered on all fronts. Like I said, the only thing I think that some people may be a little put off and feel that it's far-fetched, the whole thing about her sister just running off to New Zealand. But hey, she apparently had the money to do it. I mean, it's plausible, like if you want to try to put some reality in it, that she could have had the money to just get on a plane at a whim. Anyway, I could just go on and on. That book was so good. I feel like part of me wants to like go back and reread some, because you know I highlighted it, because that's the thing about when you do it on the Kindle, you can, there's also, you know, like ways to like digitally highlight some of the pages and look up words and things like that. So yeah, this one was really good. I would definitely recommend this one. My favorite book so far for 2021. And just so random. I mean, that's why I feel like you got to keep yourself open to whatever and not be so rigid. I do have a list of books that I want to read this year, and a lot of them are on these shelves behind me. But I have ordered some books, and this one was totally nowhere on my radar. Didn't even know this book existed. Yeah, I'm always open. Like I said, I'm not really rigid on the books that I read, because I follow a lot of book lovers on Instagram, and it seems like whatever the hot book of the month is, or whatever book came out, or whatever book, you know, is recently released, everybody's reading that book. And if it's a book that appeals to me, I mean, I'll, you know, get it or whatever, but I don't like jumping on the train with everybody else. That I've done that a couple of times, and because it was so much hype around the book when it first came out, when I read it, it just, I was underwhelmed. I was like, this book is not all that, all of y'all, what y'all are saying. And it's a very popular book. I will be doing a video about that as well, books that everybody liked but me, apparently. But yeah, so anyway, when we believed in mermaids, by Barbara O'Neill. And the title alludes to when they were younger, you know, like little girls living on the beach, they actually believed in mermaids, like that they were out there in the ocean watching over them. Because these poor children, they actually slept on the beach sometime while their parents were up there partying and had forgot all about them. So yeah, check it out. Now, on to the Dreamcast. In the role of Kit, for Kit, I was thinking Blake Lively, because I've seen her in a variety of roles, and just based on not only the physical appearance, but just the emotional depth of Kit in the book, I think she could pull that off. And then for her sister, Josie / Mary, there's an actress named Annabelle Wallace. I think that she would be really good. There was a guy that Kit met in, he was from Spain, but she met him in New Zealand. She had like this little steamy romance with. His name was Javier, and I think Oscar Isaacs would be a good character. I mean, a good actor to play that character. Their mom, Connie Nielsen, I think she would be a good role for their mom. And then Simon, who was Josie / Mary's husband. I'm torn between two Chris's, Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans, because her husband, he was, you know, a native New Zealander, but he was very fit because he owned a chain of gyms, you know, like fitness places in New Zealand. So I think either Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth in that role. But yeah, such a great book. Very, if you're looking for something heartwarming, heartbreaking at the same time, something that will stay with you for a while afterwards. Or maybe if you're someone who had like a childhood or, you know, just different issues or trials, just reading about somebody else's happily ever after might inspire you. So check it out, When We Believed in Mermaids by Barbara O'Neill. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you are liking my videos and you are telling a friend, and most importantly that you subscribe, so that way whenever I post, I'm going to try to post weekly, you'll get the notifications. Bye.